It's back on now. Don't know if it actually even started. I thought it did, but it was off. So we're now live streaming video. So if you are out there and you'd like to go to our website and watch the broadcast, whenever we are live, you can do that. W65SDChurchofChrist.org, also on our YouTube channel. And you can also call in. This is a live call-in broadcast, so you can call us with your questions or your comments at 1-855-568-1062, 1-855-568-1062. And, all right, so not only did they castigate the sinners, and they were not concerned about helping the sinner out of their sin. They were simply concerned about keeping themselves, in their minds, pure. We must always be concerned about the sinner. We must also keep ourselves pure by walking in the truth. But we need to help others. And here's a question for you, James. How can we keep ourselves pure if we turn our backs on those who are around us who are in sin? How can we claim that we are pure?
Well, we would be lying when we make that claim if that's the case. But purity in heart would require us having a heart devoted to thinking like God and wanting what He wants. And that being the case, it would be a desire for those who were lost to be saved.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Verses 18 through 22 of Mark, the second chapter. Mark chapter 2, beginning there in verse 18, Jesus is questioning about fasting. The disciples of John and the Pharisees were fasting. Then they came and said to him, that's Jesus, why do the disciples of John and of the Pharisees fast, but your disciples do not fast? Okay.
So this time it's the disciples doing something, and they ask Jesus about it.
That's right. In this case, they are condemning Jesus' disciples because of what they were not doing. And we've already talked about that a little bit, what their problem was. But what is the result of this? Well, they are condemning the righteous, the ones whom Jesus accepts, the one whom Jesus approves of their actions. They are condemning them and their actions. Why? And again, that's a common thing in our day and time. Those who preach the truth, stand for the truth, defend the truth. Why is it that so many look at them as the bad guy or guys?
Well, because they're different, and the contrast creates a feeling that they got to get rid of, and instead of getting rid of the shortcomings in their own lives, they look for the shortcomings in others, and that is easier for them to feel better about than to fix themselves.
And okay, they are condemning the righteous and their appropriate actions. Jesus goes on and explains that can friends of the bridegroom fast while the bridegroom is with them? As long as they have the bridegroom with them, they cannot fast. And so Jesus goes on and explains it would not be appropriate for them to be fasting while He is with them. The Son of God is with them. The Christ, the prophesied, promised Messiah, is with them. How can they fast under such circumstances?
Why would they want to?
Why would they want to?
So with that perspective, they can't. They
right.
wouldn't.
Now, there are those who believe that fasting, and so did the scribes and Pharisees, they believe that it was a duty, to fast so many times a week at certain times of the year to fast. That was their obligation to fast. I think Jesus here is pointing out that, fasting is not something that is to be done on a regular, consistent basis for religious purposes or for spiritual gain from the perspective of doing it as a duty every day or once a week or whatnot.
Or a scheduled thing.
That's right. It's not a scheduled thing.
With the exception of, under the law, one day of the year, which was the Day of Atonement,
yes.
Which they were required to do that.
Right. But on a regular basis, no, not a daily thing. That's, the Pharisee who went up to the temple to pray. How often did he fast?
Twice a week.
Twice a week. That's what they thought they ought to fast, twice a week. But Jesus is simply making the point, look, it's not appropriate. It's not appropriate for them to fast while the bridegroom is with them. The day is coming when they will fast, when it's appropriate. That's why the illustrations that he uses, you take a piece of unshrunk cloth and put it on an old garment. What's going to happen to that old garment?
Well, it's going to be worse, and then
make it worse.
The loss is going to be bigger and worse,
right.
and the same with new wine and old wineskins. You might actually do more long-term harm with that, doing the wrong thing
at the wrong time,
or you could even say the right thing at the wrong time.
Yeah.
In this case, but it's really the wrong thing to put a new cloth to an old garment.
So sometimes, certain things are not appropriate. And that's the point that Jesus is making. But they had raised this right or privilege or act that is to be done under certain circumstances to a matter of law that is to be kept on a regular, consistent basis.
Or at least the concept that they're spiritually superior because they keep these fasts.
Right.
Isaiah
Right.
dealt with this in Isaiah 58, and then Zechariah talks about in chapter 7 and 8 that fasting is not the issue. The attitude.
The heart.
Yeah, fasting, when you look at it in the New Testament, especially 1 Corinthians 7, it should be a byproduct of the attitude of the heart, of one who is spiritually dedicating their time and their effort to focusing on spiritual things. And when that happens, you're so focused that you're not going to eat. You're not going to sleep. And you won't have that desire to engage in sexual relations with your spouse. And so 1 Corinthians 7 talks about that, that there has to be an agreement with somebody else because of that other person is involved, and it affects them as well.
Fasting, don't really want to get into the technicalities of the issue of fasting itself. I do believe that there are appropriate times that we as Christians can fast, should fast.
Yeah, he didn't say if you fast. He
That's
said
right.
when you fast.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's not something you do once or twice a week. You don't have to set a time or schedule for it. When the situations or circumstances are where it's appropriate, then by all means. But otherwise, you don't do it just to do it. That's the point. Now, look at verses 23 through 28. Now it happened that he went through the grain fields on the Sabbath. And as they went, his disciples began to pluck the heads of grain, and the Pharisees said to him, "Look, why do they do what is not lawful on the Sabbath?" He said to them, "Have you never read what David did when he was in need and hungry, he and those with him? How he went into the house of God in the days of Abiathar the high priest, and ate the showbread, which is not lawful to eat except for the priest, and also gave some to those who were with him? And he said to them, the Sabbath was made for man, and not man for the Sabbath. Therefore the Son of Man is also Lord of the Sabbath." All right. First of all, they were plucking the heads of grain. And James, we've already talked about the issue per se. The fruit of their attitude is really what we're pointing at. When we have a hypercritical spirit, we're going to find ourselves guilty of condemning those who are innocent.
Yeah.
And that's what was taking place here. Now, they would never condemn David for what David did.
And that was unlawful, what David did.
That was unlawful, what David did. It was a matter of necessity for him, as far as from his perspective. He was running from Saul. He was fleeing.
Because he was righteous.
Because he was righteous. He was running, and he did what he felt was necessary. And, it had been taken away out of the tabernacle. I mean, it had been taken as part. But only the priest did have the right to eat that. And Jesus points that out.
Mm-hmm.
But they would never criticize David for doing that. But they're criticizing the disciples of Jesus for not breaking the law.
Yeah, for doing something that is lawful.
That's right.
That's how Jesus emphasizes their hypocrisy.
That's what Jesus is doing. He's emphasizing their hypocrisy. And then, of course, you get to chapter 3. What the result of a hypercritical spirit is eventually going to come back on you. It's going to expose your wickedness, your unrighteousness. Because in chapter 3 there in verses 1 through 7, Jesus clearly heals a man on the Sabbath day, which they condemned. These scribes and Pharisees condemned him for doing that. They condemned him for healing a man because he had a withered hand on the Sabbath day, and Jesus simply exercised his miraculous power. They condemned him for that.
And this kind of comes full circle from the beginning of chapter 2, where that was done, where he healed that man.
Yes, it does. And so it exposed their ungodliness. As you see there, they went out then and they plotted with the Herodians, by the way, who were not their friends,
right?
How they could destroy him. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. In this case, of course, they were both enemies of God. And they conspired to destroy God in the flesh. How wicked. Yeah. But that's what
the Church of Christ
until tomorrow,
that meets at
God bless you.
7115 West 65th Street in Little Rock, Arkansas, has presented this program in the interest of searching for the truth. To request a past program, religious discussion, sermon CD, or religious literature, call 501-568-1062. That's 501-568-1062. You can email Don McClain by going to the church's website at www.w65stchurchofchrist.org. That's www.w65stchurchofchrist.org. If you'd prefer to write to the West 65th Street Church of Christ, the address is P.O. Box 190062, Little Rock, Arkansas 72219. Please join us this Sunday morning for Bible study at 9 a.m. and worship at 10 a.m. Sunday evening worship begins at 5 p.m. We also have a Wednesday evening Bible study at 7 p.m. You are welcome at any and all of these services. Tell your friends to tune in each weekday afternoon starting at 3 o'clock to Searching for the Truth on Faith Talk 99.5 FM, where we hope our efforts will help you as you search for the truth.
Faith Talk 99.5.
Faith Talk 99.5 is unique as a Christian station.